Hello Sylvia, your question, creating boundaries, limits to others, towards others' attitudes without offending. So creating boundaries and limits to others' attitudes without offending them or hurting their feelings. Well, we all go through that. Great question, thank you. Something we all have to deal with and mull over. So what are my feelings on that? Well, I think creating boundaries is an obvious necessity and totally in line with self-love and self-respect. However, before I get into that, I do want to caution. Because a lot of people, this is a very complex world. People are going through complex emotional things, mental things. People get up in the head, and we get very confused. And I do hear and see a lot where people beat that drum, but it takes on, like a lot of things. We'll say something, we'll believe in something, or we'll say something, and as time goes on, it takes on a new form, really, and it becomes, it can, not always, but it can take on the form of something else and start to mean something else. And so in this case, I think we could say that could be one possibility, is that a lot of times people will be beating that drum of boundaries and of, we see it a lot, we hear it a lot, and of letting people go in their lives. So my word of caution is don't be too quick to do that. So if you feel you need to set boundaries, then don't even sweat it. You should just do it out of self-love. You'll just know. It won't be a mind thing. If you're stirring in the mind, then it's more complex. But you'll have a feeling, Just like if you're walking in the woods and you see, not the same thing at all, but you're walking in the woods and you're thinking of something else or whatever, but subconsciously you're picking up a noise, and it's a buzzing noise, and before you know it, you start to realize what that buzzing sound is, and you've walked up and there's a bee's nest. But your brain didn't really process it until you were right there, or close by. And so your brain, without struggle, it won't go, oh no, should I get out of the way? It'll just naturally say, no, this isn't for me. It could be fear. For some of us, we wouldn't be afraid necessarily, but we just naturally step to the left, go way to the left, and walk around. Calmly just walk around. It was a calm decision. It was an easy decision. It was partially instinctual, but there was no resistance to it. That's a boundary, in a sense, if you think about it. You're saying, I am not going to do that. I'm going to go this way, or this doesn't serve me. I'm going to stay away from this. So that's a kind of boundary, but of course you're talking more personal with people, and we do have to set them up sometimes. But don't be too quick, because a lot of people are actually hiding, to be frank. A lot of people are hiding, even in the spiritual community. They're still holding back, they're still hiding, they're still being transparent. Some of them are still being, not being entirely honest, etc. But that's the world. I mean, we can't. That's all of us. We're all going through these things. We should see it in the spiritual, and we should see it more intensified, because we're doing the work. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing. So we shouldn't be too hard on other people in the spiritual communities when we see them struggling and doing these kind of things, because they're ascending it. They're working through it. So give them a break. Give each other a break. But still, doesn't mean we close our eyes and pretend things aren't happening. It's good to see how this all plays out. And one of the things we see is a lot of people struggle, and they're still holding back. And so they'll use mantras like this of boundaries and cutting people out of the rest. But a lot of the times they're not really giving it a chance, and they're really just running. So just be cautious of that. So absolutely, it should be instinctual. Set your boundaries. This doesn't work for me. Don't get up in here about it. Just if that's what you're feeling, go with it. If you start to get up in the mind, then just say, hey, no, this is what I'm feeling. Is this what I'm feeling? Quiet your mind for a bit. If it feels right, then just make the decision. Don't think about it anymore. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. If you're not, that's how I normally work. But if it's new to you, You might have to practice. For me, it's just natural now, but it has been for a very long time. But it can start like everything just by kind of practicing, and then it becomes routine. And that is, if you're trying to make a decision, if you're feeling strongly moved to do a decision, but then the brain's second guessing and it's saying all these things, you know what you want to do. So just try to get out of there, do whatever you can to still the mind, get out of there. But another thing you can do is, when you make a decision, just think of it as, I'm signing off on it, I don't care. Think of it as an imaginary piece of paper. Too late, I signed it. So if you're one of those people that have trouble sticking to what your decisions are, or having trouble getting out of the mind, then just remind your mind it's a done deal. I signed it. I emotionally signed this. It's off. It's done. So sign your choices, I guess is what I'm saying. Might help. Hope I'm not getting too sidetracked. So Sylvia, you should absolutely do that, but again, just don't be too quick on the draw, you know what I mean? Cutting people out of your lives. You'll know when it really feels like it's time. But it also, we attract people, and this is the other part of it too, is we want to ascend things. And someone's putting out the vibration, I'm going to make something up. I want to open up instead of being closed off to the world. I want to open up to it. So if that's the vibration you've been struggling with and you want to ascend it, well, that's exactly what we attract. And so we see it in relationships, we see it in just, romantic or otherwise, we see it in situations. We attract them because there's your opportunity. You asked for it. You want to ascend that. So here it is. Here it is. And the more you're struggling to ascend it, probably the more intense we're going to attract it. So they're gifts, and vice versa. A lot's going on here. It's a very complex matrix going on. So there's things on their end they need to ascend, and that's why people trigger each other. So those are gifts. Let's not run from them too hastily. Let's try to work through them. And best ways to keep returning to stillness if it's getting out of control, the communication's not there. And then come back from a more, and then try to talk to them from a feeling instead of an accusatory place. And try to work it out and talk from your heart and say, look, I really like you. I'd hate to see, whatever you want to do to get through to them. But first convey your feelings of how much you appreciate them or how much you would like to work this out. And to try to touch their heart first, and just, when you're writing from that place, once you've calmed yourself and you've gone off, done whatever you did to clear the mind and get back to you, then you'll write from a better place anyway, so it'll just naturally flow better. And that's the best you can do. You can try. Sometimes you have to, though. Sometimes people are so caught up in their own stories and their own emotions and so much stuff that there's no talking to them. It happens. So, but give it a try. Try to be sensitive, try to be understanding, try to realize that a lot of what you're saying is going to come across as attack. Try to listen to your own words, and try to write from a more, or write or talk, or if you meet them, or whatever the situation is, how you're going to communicate with them. Try to center yourself and come to it the best, most peaceful you can. To give it a better chance of not getting back into the triggers again, and then it spins off. So, you do your best. Do your best. Don't jump the gun too quick. But if it's just not feeling right, or if a lot of cases they're just in a place, and forgive them, but sometimes there's people in a place where we have to let them go. We don't want to, but we have to let them go because they're either going off in a completely different direction than we are, or sometimes some kind of relationship has started where it's gotten so out of control, and the fears and the addictions and the seeking and all these other things, complex emotions start to get involved, and people become irrational. Sometimes people can't pull out of it quickly. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes years. So sometimes it's just, you've tried, but it's just, sometimes you get painted into a corner where they're so just suffering so badly that they're acting out that there's just, might not even be able to get a word in, or even talk to them. You know, people can be very dramatic. You know, hanging up, slamming doors, ignoring. You know, they do all kinds of things. So we're much like children. You know, pouting off and going to the corner, and I'm not talking to you. You know, all kinds of things, and that's fine. That happens. But sometimes, if the pain's really deep, some people can't pull out of it, and then there's just, you can try, and you might not succeed in getting through to them, and then you might have to just walk away. And when we walk away too, I do want to add too, is people always think it's forever. You never know. People change. So, and we do hear about people reuniting, families and friends that they weren't growing at the same rate. They had to part ways inevitably, and then 10, 20 years later, they're totally different people. They come back together, and they become closer than ever. So let's not put this as just because you have to, you know, cut someone loose for a while. You never know what might happen down the road. Never say never. So we don't have to look at it as absolute. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So of course, so to answer your question, yes, Sylvia, always do your boundaries from here. Don't do it from fear in the mind, but do it from when it just feels right. This doesn't work for me, okay? Absolutely. And just try to explain it to them about hurting their feelings. It's tied into what I just said. Try to be as sensitive as possible. That's all you can do. And in some cases, if you touch their heart first and they feel that you still care for them, but you're communicating your feelings, then a lot of them will respond. And that will be just the right way. And then it'll still struggle a little bit, but they'll generally start to get over it and get over resentment or anger or whatever. But sometimes there's nothing you can say. Sometimes the mind gets in there. Sometimes our minds get so up in there that it's just it's looking for fault in every word. It's already has its conclusions. It's looking for evidence. See, so no matter what you say, you know, that's why we find ourselves going, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that either. That's not what I'm saying. But it's because you're dealing with somebody with the brain's gone on there, and we've all experienced it and done it to an extent. It's because the brain's already got its story, and it thinks it's going to solve a problem, but there's no problem. It created the problem. And so, but it's so adamant in trying, in its sincerity, to try to fix the problem, but it's also getting emotional and hurt, and so it's just kind of reacting and going to old fight or flight modes, and that's how you know you're up in the brain. So, but anyways, I'm getting, this is getting a bit long-winded, so be sensitive. But you can only do what you can do, and they might not respond. There may be no talking to them, or they might not just be able, they might just misunderstand everything you're saying. You never know, but all you can do is try, but don't sweat it. That's the big thing. Our suffering comes when we put too much attention, so if at the very least emotionally you can certainly draw those boundaries from the start, or any time through, even if before, you know, deciding to have to actually cut off the relationship, you can set an emotional boundary within yourself. It's just by deciding to, by continuing to go into stillness and continuing to love yourself and grow that, it'll become more natural to do these things for you. It's less protective. We see a lot of people that have to protect themselves, and when you really love yourself, you don't really have to protect you. You'll just naturally do what's good for you. You won't stick your hand in a boiling pot. But you won't go through a big, oh, well, should I, shouldn't I, you know, I have to protect myself from that pot. It's a bad pot. You know, it's a different kind of thing. So the more you keep going inward in self-love, the more these things will naturally just unfold anyways. And you'll find your way of dealing with these things. And so, yeah, definitely set your boundaries, but stay open. Don't close off. Stay open to life. And don't sweat it. Don't sweat any of this stuff. Just relax. It's not a big deal. It's only because we put energy to it. As soon as you decide not to put energy towards whatever it is, that situation, that person that's causing you the stress, as soon as you emotionally just, and it may take a little time, but when you do that, then there you go. Problem solved. Great question. Have a night.